Hi everyone, I'm Shivali. Welcome to the Australia Plus Learn English page. We're live and we're talking about formal and informal English today. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to everyone for the questions you've submitted. Basically, we want to find out, what do these terms mean, what's the difference, when to use what, and why does it even matter. So we've got lots of things we want to cover today, and at any point, if you have a question, just remember you can ask us a question or just leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much to everyone who's actually submitted some questions to us so far. We'll try and get to as many as we can. And if we don't worry at all. We'll try our best to answer after this broadcast. So let's look at the topic that we want to cover today. Informal and formal English. Now, if you were listening to me and if you were listening to how I was introducing myself, you would have noticed that I was saying hello, I was saying you guys, and I was using words like thanks instead of thank you. And that's a good example of informal English. It's very informal, as you can see. I'm very relaxed. I'm using a very relaxed tone. I'm talking in a very casual way. And we use this often when we're talking to friends, or when we're talking about light-hearted topics, or when we're having a conversation with friends. We also use it with our family members. So if you're talking to your mom or your sister or your dad or your cousin, you tend to be informal and you tend to use informal English. And we also use it in certain settings, like when we're at a party or when we're having lunch with our friends. We tend to be in a very relaxed environment, and we'll be talking about fun topics. So we want to use informal English. Now, we also see informal English used a lot on social media. So if you look at social media pages, you'll find that the tone is very relaxed. Often we're talking to our friends, or we're trying to make new friends, or we're joining conversations with people that we don't really know, but it's on very light-hearted topics. So on social media, you'll see a lot of informal English being used. We also use it we actually use informal English more when we're speaking than when we're writing. This is a key difference that you'll come to learn, and we'll revisit it a bit more later on. And I think one of the best examples of informal English is actually slang. Now, many of you who have been following us on Learn English would have learned Australian slang with us, and slang is a very good example of informal English, and it's almost often used when we're talking, and never really when we're actually writing something. All right, so that's what informal English is. Now let me introduce you to formal English. Now, formal English obviously is formal language. It's very formal. It's very serious, and we use it when we're talking to someone in an official setting, whether it's at work or it's in school, when you're talking to your teachers or your professors, or with your colleagues. So when you're giving a presentation, for example, at work, you tend to use formal English. You're very formal, you're talking about a very serious topic, and you want to make a point, so you're very formal, and you're very serious. Formal English is also used more often in writing. So when we're writing essays, cover letters for jobs, when we're writing emails at work, we tend to use formal English so that we get our message across. We're clear, we're concise, and we're to the point. So remember, switching between formal and informal English is very common, and it does not change the meaning. It's just different ways of saying something. And we can go, in the same conversation, we can go from formal to informal English. Very often we can start with informal English, and then we can go to formal English, depending on what you're talking about and who you're talking to, and also what sort of a situation you're in. So those are the things you need to know about formal and informal English. All right. Now, we've had a look at what informal English is like. I want to show you a video so that you can understand how formal English is used in everyday conversation. All right. This is an example of a group of people at a business conference. Let's have a look and see how they behave and how they speak.
Ah, hello. I don't think we've met. Sam Ericks.
Victor Tang, pleased to meet you.
And what company are you from, Mr. Tang?
Oceanwide. I'm the sales representative for this region.
Ah, yes, I know your company. Your business is expanding very rapidly at the moment.
Yes, we're doing quite well. And yourself, who do you work for?
Actually, I work for myself. I'm the CEO of a small export and packaging company. We specialise in seafood.
It's a growing market.
Yes, but a very competitive one, Mr. Tang.
Please, call me Victor.
Sam. Victor, let me introduce you to someone. Lynn, this is Victor Tang. He's the regional rep for Oceanwide. This is Lynn Chan, my sales manager.
How do you do, Mr. Tang?
I'm very well, thank you. Nice to meet you, Miss Chan.
And you?
Can I get you another drink?
Thank you.
So, as you can see from that video, that's a very formal setting, and you saw formal English being used. It's a business conference, people are wearing business suits and they're talking very politely and very formally. And they used sentences like, how do you do, and pleased to meet you. These are very good examples of formal English. And you use it at a business conference when you're meeting someone for the first time, or you can even use it at work when you meet a client or when you meet your teachers in school. Now, if we were to say the same thing, but in informal English, we would have said something like, how are you, instead of how do you do? And we would have said, nice to meet you, instead of pleased to meet you. So as you can see, it's more casual, it's more relaxed, it's more conversational, and that's basically the big difference between the two types, formal and informal. Now, as I said, we've got lots of questions from you guys, and thank you so much. And at any point, if you feel like you want to ask a question or you want to say hi, please drop us a line, drop us a comment, and we'll try and get to as many questions as we can. I've got some questions here, and I'd just like to get to them very quickly. The first one is from Nimko Raga Jamak. Thanks for your question, Nimko. Nimko says, I need to understand the differences between formal and informal English. Please clarify. Well, that's a really good question, Nimko. You can understand what formal English is and you can understand what informal English is, but it's also good to know the differences so you can identify, in a given situation, you can identify what type of English is actually being used. So I would say there are three big differences. We've already covered one. Formal English is very serious. It's very formal. Informal English is more casual, it's relaxed, and it's less serious, of course, and you tend to use it with people you're close to or when you're talking about really fun topics. So let me give you some examples so you understand a little bit better. Formal English, you could say, good morning. You may say, good morning, how are you? So you start with the greeting, you use full sentences. But when it's informal, you can say, hey, how's it going? And also you can see the tone that I'm using, it's varying as well. When I'm using formal English, I'm a bit more serious. The tone is a bit more serious. But with informal English, I sound happy and I sound relaxed. Now, another big difference is we use different words when we use formal and informal English. So for example, if I want to say sorry, I would use the word sorry. I would say, hey, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, or I'm so sorry, when you're apologizing to a friend. But if you're apologizing in a work environment, you may write an email that says, I would like to apologize for any inconvenience caused, or I would like to apologize for my behavior. So different words, but the same meaning we're conveying, and that's because we're using one in a formal setting and we're using one in an informal setting. So there are many examples like this, but this is a key one that you might come across. Another big difference is the use of contractions. So contractions is basically shortening words. And when we're using informal English, we tend to talk really quickly and we tend to shorten our words So for example, instead of saying they will be attending the meeting tomorrow, which is something you would write down and use in formal English, you may just say they'll be attending the meeting tomorrow. So these are the three big differences that you should know. And as you expose yourself more to the language, as you listen to more English audio or you watch more videos, you'll start to pick up the differences more quickly, and also you'll be able to understand when to use formal and informal English. So I hope that answers your question. I've got another one here from Alok. Alok says, would you please explain the difference between the words wanna and want? Now that's a good question, Alok, because that's two examples of formal and informal English, but using the same, we're using two different words, but we're trying to say the same thing. So wanna is slang, and it's American slang, but it's commonly used around the world, and even in Australia it's used very commonly, and we often use it when we're talking. So you can say, I want to go to the shops, but if you're writing it, you would use want. And now we know want is a verb which we use to express desire or wish. And we use want when we are writing formally. Or we can also use want in a formal setting when we're talking to a teacher, for example, and saying something like, I want to pass my English exam tomorrow. But if you're talking to a friend, you may just say, I want to pass my English exam tomorrow. All right, so that's the key difference between the two words. If you're writing a formal letter, it's probably a good idea to use want as well. But if you're writing to a friend, you could use wanna as well. All right, so hope that answers your question, Alok. My next question is from Ratna. Ratna says, I have learnt formal and informal English, both in grammar and speaking. Can you give me clues on how I can know the difference between formal and informal idioms? Now that's a really interesting question, Ratna. We use lots of contractions, idioms, phrasal verbs, and slang when we're talking. So basically, all this is used to make up informal English. But when we're writing, when we're using formal English, we're very straightforward and we're very polite, and we use full sentences. We don't really use contractions that much. In fact, almost never. We also refrain from using phrasal verbs and idioms. So might be, I'm not sure that there is actually something like formal and informal idioms. So in formal language, idioms are not used as often. But in informal language, you use a lot of idioms and slang. Now remember, you can always use both types of English in one conversation or when you're talking to one person, okay? You don't have to, just because you started off using formal English, you have to use that throughout. You don't have to do that. You can always, go between formal and informal English. For example, if you're taking the IELTS test, and when you start the speaking test, you may use formal English. You probably would do that because you want to make a good impression and impress your examiner. So you'd say, hello, how are you? Maybe you'd start with, hello, how are you? Or hello, good morning, how are you? But once you get comfortable with your examiner and your examiner starts asking you fun questions like, oh, what are your hobbies? Or tell me about what you did on the weekend, then you may start to use informal language. And that's part of learning English as well, being able to go between formal and informal English. So that's something for you to remember, Ratna, and hope that answers your question as well. Now, if any of you have asked us any more questions and we've not been able to get to it, don't worry, we'll try and answer as many as we can after this broadcast. We're almost running out of time, but I just want to address one last point. Why is it even important to know the difference between formal and informal English? Well, if you don't use the right kind of English in the right situation, you may come across as rude, you may come across as you may cause a misunderstanding, or it may just be an awkward conversation to have. And I'm sure none of us like to be in an awkward conversation. And the more you expose yourself to English and the more you expose yourself to the language, the faster, the faster you'll be in terms of picking up formal and informal English, and you'll also be more comfortable in actually using it in different situations. So watch lots of videos, watch lots of audio, watch lots of TV, and expose yourself to as much English as possible. Now, we've also got lots of resources on our website. So we've got videos, audio, articles, and so much more. It's australiaplus.com/learnenglish. You can always go there at any time of the day and help yourself to all the lessons that we have, or you can join us on Facebook. And we've actually come to the end of the lesson today. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you had a good time, and we hope we were able to learn something, a thing or two about the differences between formal and informal English. If you have a question and you want us to answer it, don't forget you can leave us a question and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. I will see you next time. Thanks so much again. Bye-bye.